Hi, I'm Andy Acton.
And I'm Chris Strevens.
This is Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. I'm always fascinated when we get guests because this is the Business of Dentistry podcast, that's our thing, where we get guests who, whilst they're dentists, they kind of could have gone in any profession. They could have been architects or lawyers. They've got that
entrepreneurial bent, that sort of like vein running through.
And that's definitely Neal. Neal's got that eye and that instinct to look at different businesses in different ways and come up with solutions that solve problems.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is it's that standing back, because the Locumloop that people hear about is it's really quite simple.
Yeah.
But simple is quite often really good.
Yeah.
And, from listening, it's like, oh, yeah. It took a while to get there, but the application sounds brilliant.
Yeah. And also for people who are looking to do things themselves, when Neal kind of explains the work that went into it and the thinking and the time it took. Definitely. And a lot of people would lose heart. They wouldn't have the resilience. They wouldn't be as dogged to the extent that he's been to bring this to the market. Yeah. I think there's a lot of lessons in there. And also I think for people in dentistry, for me, I always get excited when there's new innovation, new solutions, definitely. New things happening. I think
it has to evolve, doesn't it?
Yeah, and also it's positive because it shows there's interest to invest in dentistry.
Yeah, definitely.
And all of us connected in dentistry need that. So it's a really interesting
good episode. Really good lad.
And if this is your first time joining us, you're very welcome. If you've joined us before, thank you for coming back. If you could subscribe, that would help us enormously because we do release a new episode every Monday morning at 7:00. Right, on to the episode.
Thank you very much.
Cool. Episode 150 or 60 something now, which is amazing.
Yeah, it's brilliant, isn't it? I love it. And I tell you what, every guest is interesting. And there's always a story to tell.
And it's funny, isn't it? Because when we started doing these, it's the Business of Dentistry podcast. And I think we kind of thought quite hard about, where does the business bit fit in? But it naturally just falls out of the conversations, doesn't it?
Well, I think it's that thing, isn't it? People of business and business of people. Most of the people we talk to are actually probably thinking about it. Most of them have set up their own things, haven't they? Or they're the founder. So therefore, they are their business. And there's a correlation between the individuals that we see and the individuals we talk about and the businesses they run.
Which is a nice fit because we have a founder joining us today. We've got Dr Neal Mehta joining us, a dentist, but also founder of Locumloop, the innovative recruitment app, which we'll come on to later. I'm excited to find out more about that. Yeah. Welcome, Neal. How are you doing?
Yeah, welcome.
Fine, thank you. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, Chris, for inviting me.
No, not at all.
Great to be here.
No, looking forward to it.
It's almost a bit ethereal with the sunlight behind there.
Yeah, shining in. Yeah. Yeah, so if you're listening to this as a podcast, you can't see it, but Neal has this beautiful summer sunlight
it's lovely.
Coming through the window
very
behind
rare,
you.
Very rare.
So, in the UK.
It's looking good, though. It's looking good.
So to start with, can we just roll back to your childhood to get a sense of who you are? What did family look like for the young Neal?
So family, started off with how I got into dentistry. Do you want to start with that? Or?
No, before then.
No, before
then.
Yeah.
Oh, that's quite interesting.
Oh, no, I bet you it is. See, the fact you've skirted over that, Neal, makes me think, no.
We'll go digging.
We now find he's like a clubber, international hockey player, or something.
No, childhood was relatively, normal. I mean, as in went to school around Northwest London from primary.
I was going to say, where were you brought up?
Yeah, Northwest London, around Northwood area.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, so not central London, but, on the outskirts.
So you went to either haberdashers or merchant tailors.
I went to
Harrow. There we go.
See, that was good. I don't like Habs. So.
No, local knowledge, you see. A lot of my friends went to Habs, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah. So I went to Merchant Taylor's Prep, then moved on to Habs. It was Northwood Prep back then. So steady progression from one to the other. Always had work instilled into me from a young age, and obviously going to those type of schools, I think it was the norm there. So natural progression from that. Actually went to Habs, didn't actually, they predicted me worse grades than what I got in my actual AS levels at the time.
Ah, okay.
Well done.
So I had to move to college at 17 because they actually predicted me the correct grades, I guess.
Oh, wow.
And got into dental school from there.
Oh, okay.
So studied hard, worked hard. Back from there to getting into dental, I went to Cardiff Uni.
Right, I was going to ask where you went. Yeah.
And, was there from 2009, 2009, yeah, not 19,
19. You've done very well, sir.
You've knocked a decade off yourself.
And qualified in 2014.
Your father's a dentist. Was that a big influence in you choosing dentistry?
Yeah, I guess so. I think that was a big influence. He was an inspiration to me. I think I always saw him as a kind of a figure that had a stable life. We had enough to afford what we needed, send us to private school. So I think it was instilled in me from a young age. I kind of thought, I always think I was thinking a little bit beyond my years in terms of thinking, okay, well, I want to have a stable career, be able to provide, make sure I don't need to worry about finance. Obviously, it comes at a cost of hard work. But
Sure.
I think I saw that life and I kind of wanted that and wanted more as well, obviously.
He was only 8 at the time.
Yeah. Actually, my wife was always saying that. She said, you were thinking about random things when you were young. I was on, in the park with my friends.
But you say the thing about hard work, Neil. I think the bit that people miss is everything's hard work.
Yeah.
I'm sure the person stacking shelves in a supermarket, they are working hard. So I don't think anything isn't hard work. I think it's just the direction you go in. And I think particularly for younger people, it's having, a mentor, parents, whatever, to point you in the direction where you have a lucrative career ahead of you.
I just had this fantastic image of Neil in the park on his bike, sitting there thinking about his pension.
Yeah, pretty much. But I think he was always quite a serious character, like in that sense. He was very work orientated. So a lot of the discussions were around work, even though I wasn't involved in his work at 8.
Right.
So, at that stage, I was just naturally, I was kind of taking it in from that age. And I thought, this is something where I can do something clinical, help patients, I guess, that is part of it. But also the main thing at that stage was I can run my own practice and I can have the independence and I can, be with dad and help him potentially, but that was a long way away, but also have my own place and build it up and explore that route. So I thought it gave me the flexibility to have 2 kind of avenues where you have, number one was business for me always. It was always, that was my priority. Secondary was clinical.
Right.
And hence why, I chose the profession.
Yeah.
It's really interesting, isn't it, that you sort of end up with that. I know we're taking the mickey out of you, for learning about your pension when you're 8, but it's that sort of osmosis thing, isn't it? The fact of if you're surrounded by it, it just becomes part of you and your thought process. It's fascinating.
Yeah,
So if we go the other way then, Neil, you obviously took inspiration from your father and your dentist. Would you recommend dentistry to your kids?
Yes, I would. Maybe not in this country with the tax, but yeah. But I don't know. Yeah, no, I think I would. I think, vocational degrees, vocational professions are a good way forward. Obviously, you can go into other things and they could be hugely beneficial, but I think it is a good avenue to make sure you have that stability and also with a clear progression and also the earning potential as well. So I think, it is a good profession. And I would encourage them.
Is your wife a dentist or medical or anything? Or
no, she's
how
in
did you
HR.
meet?
So I've met her in Poland. Yeah, when I was.
You met her in Poland?
Yeah.
What, on holiday or something?
Yes, I was. I was
wow.
when I was 20. I remember, and we did long distance for 5 years. Yeah, and then she finally made.
Is she Polish?
Yes, she is. She is.
Oh, okay, right.
University and her masters, and then didn't want to move. And then I proposed to her, and then she said, "Okay, well, if this is going to work, one of us is going to move, and I
We
always
probably have to live in the same country. That probably
that probably would be a good idea. But we made it work for many years. Yeah.
Wow.
I wonder whether the world's changing. No, it's not that long ago, but now with dating apps and everything else, whether that kind of, interrailing, meeting somebody in that situation, that's becoming less common than it would have been 20, 30 years ago, where you met somebody on holiday or in a bar or in a club or wherever it might be, whereas now it's become a very digital thing, isn't it? So it's nice to hear that kind of experience is still out there.
And that you made it, that you kept it going for 5 years. I mean, that's a long old.
It was 21, 21, something like that when we started. Yeah, something like that. I can't remember. It's long. Been married 7 years. So
Brilliant.
Put together a long time.
Married 7 years, dentist for 10 years. You were also an FD trainer for 6 years. So I'm interested, based on what you saw as an FD trainer, what you learnt at dental school, is there something missing today? What are the younger dentists coming out looking like compared to when you qualified? And okay, it's only 10 years, but it's still a 10-year period.
They make really good notes.
Yeah, are you seeing a difference in the young dentists coming out of school today to how you graduated?
I think, obviously less clinical experience. It's just naturally just the way. They coming out with less and less clinical experience, and it varies quite a lot between universities for some reason. I don't know why, but it seems to. You tend to find the London universities have less experience, probably because of the number of patients per student. But in general, you find that, whereas you see Manchester, Bristol, Cardiff, Liverpool having more experience in general. But yeah, no, I think, the main thing is they come in with this kind of almost blinkered appearance of what dentistry should look like and how it is in reality and who they're being taught by, and the fact that they just want to practice clinically as they've done at university. So I think, things are different in terms of clinical, but also I think everyone still says the same thing. We had no idea about the business side, NHS, private side. So they come in, and actually that's one thing that I spend a lot of time with all my FDs. I say, you've got to come in as a clinician, but you've also got to understand that when you're doing it, understand what are you doing with the NHS? What can you do privately as well? Yeah. And then when you go to becoming an associate, you are 10 steps ahead of everyone else. Because of the fact that you understand what it's about. I think I had, my dad was predominantly, he did private work, but predominantly the practice was NHS run. Right. We managed to, convert it more to private. As a way, it's going kind of ahead with a lot of practices, but that was always, when I joined, I was like, Dad, we've got to change things up, You're running it well, really well, good staff, everything, but we've got to increase our private potential because it's there. The patients are there. We're in Harlow. I mean, one of the practices in Harlow, that's where Dad's place is. And when I joined and became a partner, I said, okay, I don't want to just join as a son who just sits and works in the surgery. I've got to increase revenue for the place in order to make sure that, I'm worth my role. Yeah. So then it was like, okay, what else can we do? How can we explore private avenues, and slowly increasing, different types of specialities or even hygiene roles. We didn't have a hygienist there before, for example. Wow. So just adding things in, simple things, but also I think the beauty of dentistry is that almost running a dental practice, if you add a service in an industry, with very little cost up front, you can have a huge revenue. Whereas with most other businesses, you need to add a lot of capital in order to increase revenue. Yeah. Whereas in a dental practice, you can actually spend relatively little amount and get a huge increase in revenue from something very simple. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. You just can stop it. If it works, great.
It's not bankruptcy territory, is it? It's not.
No. But it does sound very much like you happen to be a dentist, but it's business that drives you. you could have gone into accountancy or an architect or a lawyer, but you'd have still always been looking at the business side of whichever profession you were in.
100%. Yeah, that was always my passion. Yeah.
You were saying about the younger dentists as they qualify. On the flip side to it, are there things that they're coming out with that you didn't have when you qualified? Is there an upside or a benefit that's coming out of dental school that wasn't there before? Or
Fear.
I was about to say that, Chris.
Sorry.
I mean, I think it's the fear element as well. I think that's it, but no, I don't think there's anything extra they're being given.
Right. Yeah.
And I think they all seem pretty similar when they come out. All think they're amazing extractions, but then when they they've only taken out like a grade 3 mobile, which is probably the most mobile tooth possible in a mouth. And then you're like, do you know how to take out a root? And they're like, no, we hadn't had to do that. So I was like, that's something you're going to struggle with. In general, I just don't think I don't think there's much else that uni gives that they give. Than they did in my time, I guess. Yeah,
that practical thing is amazing, isn't it? We've had a few guys who sort of said to us, exactly really what you said. They'll come along and they can do an extraction on an easy tooth, but give them something else, they're like, well, I've never done one of those before, or I've never done a root filling on here, or whatever. And I suppose as a non-clinician, you think, so what have they taught them? Why have they not taught them to do these things? Exactly. It's mad, isn't it? Because you're training them now, you're educating them. And I almost felt that FD was sort of like the idea was that you brushed, you rubbed the rough edges off it and you turned it into a pearl of a dentist. But the more it sounds as an FD, you're sort of almost like a quasi practical clinical trainer, aren't you? Because you're having to.
I think you're almost like you're basically their university clinical, because you're almost their supervisor, because the thing is you should really be they're fully qualified, you should really be helping them with the basics, like the basics, but the harder stuff. Whereas you're helping them from start to finish almost with the procedure. They're asking you, does a cavity look okay? Have I removed all the decay? Have I done this? It's like from start to finish.
It's almost like they're coming out with all the theory but none of the practical experience, which is a shame, isn't it?
Yeah,
it is a shame. Yeah, so you in partnership with your father, you're also a partnership in another practice as well.
With my brother.
Oh, your brother. Is that a different practice? So there's one with your brother, one with your father.
Where we're partners with my dad. So my brother, myself, my dad.
Right.
And the other practice is we bought that in 2015 with my brother. So I qualified and literally bought the practice with my brother very soon after. He's 3 years older than me. So we were looking at practice in London. They were very expensive. So we thought, we can't afford that much at that time. So we were like, okay, well, let's look out. Found Salisbury, random kind of location, because everyone asked Salisbury.
Yeah, Salisbury. That's interesting.
They've been in Northwest London, and it was just, we saw potential in the practice. But yeah, I mean, in hindsight, it was very, like, looking at, we obviously had to build it up, but in hindsight, it was a big risk we took, because the principal that we bought for was unfortunately ill for about 3 or 4 years, run with locums for that period of time.
Right.
And so the patient list had been whittled down, and also the staff, there was a lot of problems with staff, hence Locumloop and all that. So we were relying on, high turnaround of staff, agency staff at that time as well. And
hard to build culture, isn't it, when there's all that?
Oh yeah,
it's actually almost more difficult than a squat, I feel, because you're actually inheriting bad culture. And if you inherit bad culture, you can't actually, it's more difficult in that stage than actually, I feel, maybe I'm saying it after 10 years that's the case, but I do feel now in hindsight, I think actually probably running a squat and making your own can sometimes in many ways, inherit all the problems from a previous practice. Or
you start with a blank canvas.
You create it as you want to create it.
Did you bounce around much as an associate before?
I was an associate at my FD practice for about a year.
Right.
Or so, whilst I was kind of between purchased the practice, dad's practice, so I was in the process of kind of doing a bit of associate work at that time. But I learned a lot from my principal, even in that short period.
Yeah, no, it's only interesting. We do some work with Samir Patel from 11 Dental, and he says how young dentists should move around, get 2, 3, 4 different jobs. And it's interesting you saying that you learned a lot from that practice. And I think sometimes that people get very comfortable in one place, they don't move, and then they don't necessarily get that broad range of experience that others have.
Yeah, definitely.
No, I think it was just the way, not just I wanted to progress. I think my brother was a bit ahead of me, and I just had a clear vision of what I wanted. But I think hugely beneficial to do that. I think that is the right way to do it. If I kind of went through the traditional route of no family in the business, I would have done probably a couple of years at least, and seeing how things were run, and then picking out the best qualities of every single practice and then putting it into my own, essentially.
Yeah.
Any other dentists in the family that you're going to go into partnership with, or?
No. Just a lot of dentists in the family. We've got, I tend 10 first cousins on my dad's side, and 7 are dentists.
Wow.
Yeah, so
I think family gatherings are great.
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah, wear your scrubs.
All the wives are just like, what the hell?
So then,
Or husband. Yeah.
Do you also, just out of interest, do you also, when you all get together, do you just suddenly someone go, oh, I'll tell you what, I had a terrible 4 extraction or whatever it might be, and then everyone else is in? Is it like that? It's like golfers.
Sounds familiar.
You when you were talking about Salisbury, you said about the people issues, and you glanced over Locumloop. But about 18 months ago, you started this innovative platform for the recruitment of dental nurses. Was that the spark that kind of lit that flame? Your own experience in Salisbury for this new business, or how did that come about?
So I think I always bounced around different ideas of what I could do or expand, or thought, and I just, it wasn't, partly Salisbury, but partly, okay, well, why am I getting such high bills from these agencies? And also, I understand there is a reason why the bills are high, because, they've got to pay employed staff, and, they've got their costs as well. So we were relying quite heavily on agency at some periods, and our turnover or our revenue at that point wasn't that great. So running a practice or a surgery almost was nonsensical at times by hiring your agency, a nurse, plus running the practice. And I was thinking, well, there has to be a better way to do this, because I'm phoning the agency. And back in that time, my brother and I were doing all the management together. So we didn't have a manager at a time. So we're ringing the agency saying, can you come in? Or scrambling to the phone at like 6 a.m. or like 10 p.m. our nurse saying we're ill. So I thought, there has to be a much better way of doing this, in terms of having a platform or an app that can connect nurses directly to practices at a much more cost-effective rate, where I always believe in, being fair on both sides. So nurses get paid fairly, but also it benefits the practice as well. So I wanted it to be a win-win situation. So long story short, we launched about 18 months ago, but took about 3 years to build it, or 2 years, 2.5 years or so to build the platform. So I was doing it in between work and, business and everything. So, but spent a long, long time to ensure that we had some clear USPs, some clear differences to the traditional agencies, and we could be fully automated from start to finish, no semi-automation where you can book a nurse through the platform, but then you have to pay them via BACS transfer. So we wanted it from start to finish, booking, set rates, to nurse going into the timesheets, to payments also automated via Stripe, invoicing automated, all of that from start to finish. So there's no headache from a practice principal point of view or a manager point of view. Yeah, so I mean, I think obviously that came with time and the discussions we had over the 2.5 years or so about how we could make it the best platform possible.
And I imagine one of the challenges with that as well is that the nature of that world, it keeps evolving and developing so quickly. At some point, you've got to break the pencil and say, right, we're now going to go with it. Because there's always another integration. There's always another a little bolt on. There's always another improvement coming. And the risk is it just becomes one of those projects that just rolls and rolls and you never actually turn it into something which is commercial. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's why, that's why you hear, I think it's like 5% of startups actually succeed or something.
Yeah.
5%, because it is kind of being knocked down and then having to get yourself up and say, okay, well, it's not like dentistry. You buy a practice, you would hope that it would at least remain stable or succeed. And that's why I look at it. And when people say tech valuations so high, I now understand why.
Starting things is hard. Buying something that's established, particularly in a dental practice context, if you just keep doing what's been done before, as you said, you'll kind of get the same.
You'll be all right.
Yeah, but actually literally having an empty space and starting from scratch, as you found with your recruitment business, it's not easy. And that's why people pay significant premiums for existing businesses.
Glad we got out of recruitment, basically.
Yes.
Obviously a wise business decision by us.
This week's episode is brought to you in partnership with Ultimate Dental Business. We know as guys who have supported dentists for over 25 years and through hosting this podcast that building business skills in dentistry is vital. Time and again, we hear from dentists who tell us that they find the business side of dentistry the most challenging. And we know that stress and pressure comes from doing things we don't feel well equipped to do. That is why we are delighted to be part of Ultimate Dental Business, the new dental business hub delivering top-tier business training for dentists. Founded by Dr. Brad Thornton and Dr. Krupal Shah, Ultimate Dental Business is a response to the lack of robust dental business education currently available. Through our effective collective discussions with dentists, it was clear they most needed good structure and effective guidance to give them the knowledge and tools to be successful dental business owners and to create a business that serves them rather than the business that takes all their time and energy to keep going. To find out more about developing your own business education, click on the link in the show notes or go to ultimatedentalbusiness.com.
I think, with us, the beauty is we are recruitment as kind of slightly like recruitment, but we're a connecting platform. We're almost like, the best way to describe us like Uber. Our nurse is self-employed. The practice pays directly into a pot that goes into the nurses separate and ours separate. Yeah. So it's, in a way, we don't need to deal with the headache of employment and employment law. But in order to even just launch the platform, my God, we had so many discussions with lawyers about, we need to make sure we're adhering to regulations and these nurses aren't self-employed and we can actually do what we're doing. So getting to that stage even to just launch was very difficult, not just that the actual platform, we're a web app, not an app, but was very difficult in itself. But, we got there in the end, launched about 18 months ago and been growing ever since. But, it's just the mentality as well of dentists and dental practice owners, and they're stuck in their ways. So it's just converting that. Takes time, but we're going in a really exponential way. But, it takes time with any business, I guess.
And obviously, so there was also a bit of a double whammy for dentistry with Brexit and COVID, in that we had people leave the profession, some people left the country. So there was that kind of real pinch point on recruitment. So your solution kind of came out after that. But is the recruitment of specifically nurses, is it getting better or worse? Are practices still scrambling around to try to find the people that they need?
Yeah, they still are. I mean, the need for locums is massive. In traditionally, I would say, like, in pharmacy, and especially pharmacy, I would say, and even in NHS hospitals, they're using them on a much wider scale. But nursing itself, like, we currently only supply nurses, is huge. The potential is huge. we've got the supply. We see it on a daily basis where we're getting practices join and posting jobs. So like say we're getting a new practice sign up, getting jobs posted for the next 4 months, and maybe 15 jobs or 20 jobs. So naturally, I think what it is that people go, because agencies have kind of ruled the locum way of doing things in the dental industry, and dentistry is slightly behind, I would say, other professions. And people aren't used to change or integrating tech into their practices, or thinking, am I going to get a nurse with this, or is it going to work, or being generally a little bit skeptical. You tend to find a bit of resistance, but once someone uses you, we've got a 90%. Our fill rate, we do our charts, is 90% plus. We're actually at like 92% of all, and that's UK wide. So our fill rate is really high, but it's just convincing that practice to post their first job.
Yeah.
And then once you've done it, you're kind of got them in for hopefully for life, or for however long. Locum's almost like a dirty word, I always say, because practice industry, you would find that a lot of principals are like, no, I don't need locums. Why would I need locum? Like, I'm like, well, it's okay. Everyone needs it. It doesn't matter, you know. And my staff are, when you speak practice,
doesn't make you a bad boss, does it?
No. Doesn't exactly. This is what I try to say. It's like, it's typical in pharmacy. It's typical in other industries, but they just see it as they can't run and retain staff. Whereas, if you can actually, have a locum at a cost-effective rate, it's almost like paying an employed staff, I say.
Is that what it is? There's embarrassment at the need for a locum, because
there's a lot of
it kind of subtly implies you don't have a good enough business that people want to say they're ongoing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it'll be an interesting one. If it's, I was thinking if the legislation changes that for labour, as in employment, to day one, it'll be interesting whether there's a shift in people looking at Locumloop and saying, well, actually, I might as well just have someone self-employed, and then I don't have to worry about it. So they don't have any rights anyway. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's once you work out your PAYE, your holiday pay, all of that, you realise that actually having a nurse with us, the nurse is still getting a very good rate, but also the practice is saving. We're on average £100 more reasonable than an agency per nurse per day. So that's like a huge saving when you're looking at a corporation.
That's a massive saving. That's straight to your bottom line, isn't it?
Yeah, we are, and on weekends even more. I mean, one of the corporates actually said to us that joined us, you are more reasonable than hiring our own nurse weekends.
Wow.
So we've got, so the thing is, nurses are taking the jobs because they have a steady increment in their pay, like their pay scale. So the more they work using the platform, the increments go up. They've got complete flexibility over their diary, and we're not forcing them to take any jobs. So they've got complete control. Whereas with an agency, you're forced to take certain jobs in many cases. And you've got to travel where they ask. Whereas, a nurse is exactly where and when they want to work.
And because it's diverse, they're very rarely at the same place for all the time. So they can then make sure IR35 doesn't knock on their door.
Yes,
that's quite useful, isn't it, as well? Because you've got that flexibility and spread of employer.
Chris was saying about retention as well. Whilst your business is locum, supplying locums, is there still an ongoing recruitment issue within dentistry? Are you seeing an increased flow of nurses wanting to work in the style that you can offer them, as opposed to committing to a practice and staying there on one site long term? Are we seeing a shift in terms of how nurses in the UK work?
I think it's just, I would say there is a slight shift, because naturally we've got nurses signing up to the platform every day. We've got thousands of nurses, not just thousands. They're signing up, so it obviously shows that they're shifting more towards that type of behavior. And I would say it's slightly a generational thing as well. People want more flexibility, kind of work when they want to work rather than being employed, or have a mix of employment and self-employment. So it gives them that flexibility. And I think in general, I mean, I was speaking to one of my nurses today, and, you know, she was saying that she works with us one day with an agency and with us on an employed basis for 3 days. And she said there's one practice that is a corporate practice that has no nurses currently. And, you know, they're using like 5 locums a day. So we're just, it's...
the hit to their bottom line is massive, isn't it?
Yeah, so the thing is also talking to corporates, and we've had some discussions with corporates as well. And we're in a position where we're saying to them, you're going to save this much money, and this is the ease. And these are the testimonials of people that are actually using our platform, but on the corporate groups that we have on board. But I think the problem is the shift, it's the mentality. It's, oh, we've got this red tape, or we've got this, or we've got this that's important. But everyone's thinking about increasing revenue. No one's thinking about saving money, I find. They're always thinking, how can we add a composite bonding course to everyone, rather than why don't we just save some money here, or cut budget here, and have a more cost-effective solution.
I think sometimes in large organisations, it's getting through to the right person that sees it through the right lens. Because I guess if you're speaking to HR people, where they have an HR function and they're set up for managing people, and effectively you're going to take that all away from them, and it's going to be streamlined and managed, and it's automated and simplified. Anyone who's sitting in an HR department might, from a selfish point of view, see this as bad news, because they're not really needed. So it's getting to a stage in a business where it's the people that are understanding the wider business benefits of this and the improved efficiency.
It reminds me of the NHS. Do you remember the guy when we used to do it, and we never were on the network, but you had the network approved people, which is like, you know, Locumloop, and then you have the off-network people if you can't get anyone, and it's almost like they need to adopt that attitude that says, look, you know, we're not telling you don't have to use it, but try this first, and if that, then you can go to then you can go and spend more money.
no, 100%. I think, you know, and also the fact that if they kind of shift towards using us, they find that it's actually what we found whenever we've got a few corporates on board, and we find that they say, oh, it's much easier to track things, because the problem with the locums is you get, say, 30 different agencies, 30 different bills every month. They're compiling and get your end of year accounts, and you're like, I'm not going to swear, but they're like,
the reconciliation is a pain.
They're just, so they don't look at it on a monthly basis, but if they're kind of using someone like us on the majority of their jobs, they can do reports. They can have a look at jobs in advance, look at jobs on a month-by-month basis.
But this is the hidden cost of managing people, isn't it? It's not just what's the hourly rate. Yeah, that's such a binary, basic question. Well, what's the hourly rate? What's the hourly rate? It costs more. We won't do it. It's like, well, like you say, what about the year-end reconciliation of having bundles of papers coming in from lots of different agencies,
different sources,
and having to allocate those to particular practices so you can find out what the cost centre and the profit was per site. Once you multiply up the work that goes with that, you can see having a streamlined system is so much better in so many ways, and also from a reporting and accountability point of view.
Yes, it's great. It's great.
It sounds brilliant. It sounds brilliant. You're clearly very entrepreneurial. In how you steamed into what was your dad's practice with your big ideas and what you're doing with Locumloop. What would you distill down as the key skill you need for entrepreneurial success?
I would say listen to people, listen to your team, listen to your nurses, listen to your patients, but especially your nurses actually, I would say take it in, evaluate, see what point, use them as well for their skill set, because they're better at a lot of things than you are. So I would say management of your team is the number one most important thing. 100%. You've got to get them on your side. But I love it personally. I'm generally quite a social guy. So, and also I want to make sure they're happy at work. And it gives me pleasure to see them, you know, wanting to come to work and enjoying the environment and all of that, and feeling safe in the environment. So I'd say, yeah, make sure team's on your side, but look after them well, and do it as a genuine human, rather than doing it to keep them. You just do it as you want to be. Treat them as you want to be treated, and learn from them as well. And so I would say that's number one. Always keep your team on your side. Yeah, and just always expanding every month. Like, even if it's one simple idea, it's just, I want to change the phone lines in the practice to make sure that people are actually picking up the phone rather than it going to voicemail. I want to make sure the cancellation policy is fine. All these little bits add up, and that essentially is going to increase your revenue at the end of it, because it's not just that one thing. It's those hundreds of things that add up over a long period of time, which will then have the end result. And that's what it is, what people fail to understand. Go in, do their work, run the practice, don't really think about much else. Think about composite bonding, where they may get one patient a month, rather than just changing the phone lines. They may pay 150 quid a month, but they may pick up 100 more calls, which may generate them 30 more grand a month. So it's just simple things, just learning and listening to people. Like you, Andy, I don't know, Chris as well, but, you know, listening to entrepreneurs like you who have a lot more experience than myself, and have the industry knowledge, and getting that and just digesting it and trying to
it's funny what you say about those small improvements. We have a thing in our business about 1%ers, and we constantly encourage our team to look for little 1% improvements for the point that you raise, which is those 1%, they compound over time. But also, it's rare you ever find a business that just does one thing so incredibly well. It's normally a real patchwork quilt of lots of small things all together that make it quite magical.
Stagnate and die.
Yeah. and also, I think if you're looking for 1%ers, that makes it very hard for your competition, because they can't just watch what you do and just say, well, we'll do that. Well, that in itself isn't actually that interesting. It's that plus that squared equals the result. And that's where I think the magic is. So I think those 1% are really important.
Yeah, it's a constant evolution, like you said, competition, making sure that you're doing something every day, every month. I will try to think, okay, well, what else can we do? What else can we do? So
no right to exist.
Really
that's what we always say. No right to exist.
Yeah, it could be something so minute, so small, but it makes a big difference. Like, even when I always say, when there's a problem, you've got to solve it. In anything, you would do that with a mass problem. You would get a problem, you would solve it, right? Whereas in dentistry, you get a problem like, oh, these patients are cancelling last minute and it's really annoying us, and they're rubbish and they're this and they're that. Okay, well, let's do something about it. Let's actually implement something that works and can also help us, or your team are unhappy about something. Okay, let's sort it out. Let's actually do something about it. Whereas people just, I would say a lot of principals may not, but, you know, if you want to be successful, I think you've got to just listen and just implement something to solve the problem, rather than just saying, oh, it's a problem, just leave it, or it'll sort itself out, because eventually it's going to become a bigger problem.
It won't sort itself out.
It's not going to sort itself out.
Absolutely. Neil, we got to the stage in our episode where we need to ask you a couple of very, very serious questions.
Important questions.
Very serious questions. So the first question is, you're a fly on the wall in a situation. Where are you and who's there?
And, a fly on the wall, who's there?
Yeah. That's as serious as it gets. Honestly, that's it.
That is as serious. I would probably say Steve Jobs, when he released the first iPhone, and how that changed the world, basically. I think that I would like to see what he was thinking, what he said, and how it became such a revolution, really, like how it revolutionized the world.
It's funny, isn't it? Today, most people have a smartphone of some sort or other, whether it's an iPhone or another smartphone, and we just take them for granted. But you're right. Somebody like Steve Jobs would have had to have sold that idea that we're going to have this device that's going to basically provide us with all of our connectivity and so much more. And imagine the blank faces.
We're going to spend billions on developing it.
Yeah.
But it might work.
Yeah. and it's not just convincing other people who are interested in tech. It's the finance world.
Yeah, definitely.
And bringing consumers along. So a visionary like that in the very early days, that'd be a fascinating situation to watch.
Yeah, not BlackBerry kind of out of anyone's hands, literally. And it's just pretty much overnight. So,
and the thing is, in the early days, the BlackBerry had the email integration, which the iPhone didn't have, and the BlackBerry was the thing. If you worked and you wanted email to your phone, you had a BlackBerry, and then literally overnight, iPhone got it fixed, and BlackBerry.
It's Blockbuster.
Yeah.
Blockbuster.
Yeah. And they didn't believe in, was it touchpads? Or was
yes.
It? Yeah, so they didn't want to convert. They didn't want to change.
No.
But yeah, I mean, I think I think he did an amazing job. I don't know how he managed to convert everyone literally overnight.
Oh.
It's using an iPhone.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
Remarkable. And our follow-up questions, if you had the opportunity to meet somebody, who would you like to sit down with and have a conversation?
They can be dead, obviously.
Head of these corporates? No, but all of them in one room. I would say either Einstein, because he was a scientist, but also he had a lot more to him, or someone like Mandela. But I mean, I don't know how to answer. You know what? I'm not sure. Yeah, but
it's hard.
I would say maybe Einstein.
Yeah, It's funny with Einstein because we're used to the photograph of him, the real mad professor type photographs. And when I saw the film Oppenheimer, it took me by surprise slightly because he's in the film as a real person, and you forget that he actually lived in fairly recent times. And he always seems like this mythical creature from
he's always in black and white.
Hundreds of years ago.
I think being in black and white makes a big difference.
Yeah, and it kind of took me by surprise, and I sometimes forget that he's fairly recent in our history. But yeah, he'd be a fascinating person. I imagine he'd be quite a hard person as well because he's so intelligent, he'd lose you quite quickly. Or me.
Yeah.
or give him a whiskey or something. I don't know if he was a drinker. It'd be interesting.
Yeah, so no, I think it's a hard question, but yeah, probably Einstein.
Cool.
Yeah,
excellent.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Cheers, Neil. That was wonderful. Thank you very much indeed.
Very interesting.
I wish you well with your dentistry and your practices, and also your new business, Locumloop, as well. I'm excited to see how that kind of transforms.
I'd be very interested
working across dentistry in the years to come.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Thanks so much for inviting me, Chris and Andy.
No, not at all.
Our pleasure.
Not at all.
And, take care. Have a nice holiday.
Look after yourself.
Cheers, man.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.